Before sunrise on April 28, 1789, Fletcher Christian and several sailors entered William Bligh's cabin aboard HMS Bounty. A bayonet pointed at him. Within hours, Bligh and 18 loyal men were drifting in a small open boat. Then the mutineers turned to the cargo. They hauled hundreds of living breadfruit plants from the ship's floating nursery and threw them into the Pacific. Most retellings stop with the mutiny, but they skip the question that changes the whole story. Why had Britain sent a Royal Navy ship halfway around the world for this green potato-like fruit? The answer was written into the sugar economy. Britain wanted breadfruit in the Caribbean as cheap food for enslaved workers. Yet the tree had a life before the British Empire, and it would have one after it. Pacific people had carried and cared for it for thousands of years. Caribbean communities would later turn an imposed crop into a national food. Breadfruit did not cause the mutiny. It was the Bounty's forgotten mission, and its journey reveals who gets to decide what a food is for. The Bounty was not simply a naval ship with a few plants tucked below deck. Britain had converted part of it into a nursery. Wooden frames held rows of pots. The great cabin, normally the captain's private space, was given over to breadfruit. That tells us how seriously Britain took the mission. The ship reached Tahiti in 1788. Bligh and his crew then stayed for 5 months, waiting for the young trees to become strong enough for the voyage. During that long pause, sailors built relationships ashore. Shipboard discipline strained. Resentments grew. Bligh had promoted Christian to acting lieutenant. Now the man he trusted with authority was about to seize his ship. Historians still debate the mix of anger, loyalty, punishment, and desire that pushed the men over the edge. But breadfruit itself was not the cause. It became a casualty. After taking the ship, the mutineers needed room and supplies. The carefully tended plants went overboard. Pots cracked against the water. Leaves disappeared behind the ship. In a few violent minutes, years of planning seemed to vanish. Bligh's own story should have ended there too. Instead, with 18 men crowded beside him and little food or water, he navigated the open boat more than 3,600 miles to safety. It was an astonishing feat, and it gave him a chance to try again. Britain did not abandon the breadfruit plan. Bligh returned to the Pacific on another ship, the Providence. This time, he brought the plants through. In 1793, breadfruit arrived in St. Vincent and Jamaica. So the mutiny, everyone remembers, delayed the mission. It did not defeat it. And to understand why the British government refused to let this tree go, we have to leave the quarterdeck and meet the people who had already made breadfruit extraordinary. Cut open a mature breadfruit, and you do not find the juicy sweetness its name suggests. The flesh is pale and firm. Once cooked, it is closer to potato or fresh bread, warm, starchy, and filling. Let it ripen further, and it becomes softer and sweeter. That simple change in texture created many possible foods, but the real achievement was not hidden inside one fruit. It lived in generations of Pacific knowledge. For more than 3,000 years, voyagers carried breadfruit across Oceania. Many of the most valued trees produced no seeds, so they could not spread by accident. People had to carry living plant material, tend it, and begin again on another island. Think about the choice behind that. Space in a voyaging canoe was precious. Every plant taken aboard was a decision about the future, what a new settlement might eat, what would survive there, and what children not yet born might inherit. Over generations, communities selected different breadfruit varieties for flavor, texture, timing, and local conditions. The trees grew within food landscapes alongside other crops rather than in isolated rows. A mature tree could feed people season after season while also providing shade and useful material. And when too much fruit ripened at once, communities had ways to carry abundance beyond the harvest. In parts of Micronesia, breadfruit was fermented in pits lined with leaves. The preserved food could last for a year or more. No laboratory was required to understand the central idea. A seasonal crop becomes security when a community knows how to store it. This was not an untouched miracle tree, waiting for Europeans to discover it. It was a cultivated inheritance, shaped by people whose names rarely appear in British ship records. When naturalist Joseph Banks encountered breadfruit in Tahiti, he saw a remarkably productive food tree. He helped promote the idea of moving it west. But Britain was about to place Pacific abundance inside a very different system. The Caribbean sugar islands made fortunes for Britain. They also depended on a brutal machine, land seized for plantations, exhausting labor forced from enslaved Africans, and food supplies that could be disrupted by war, storms, and distance. During the American War of Independence, familiar shipments to the British Caribbean became less reliable. Hurricanes and other disasters deepened the pressure. Food shortages were real. People suffered. That is the important counterpoint. Breadfruit was not proposed in a world where hunger had been invented as an excuse. But look at how plantation owners described the solution. They wanted a crop that could grow locally, produce heavily, and reduce the cost of feeding enslaved workers. Breadfruit might replace imported provisions. It might also reduce the time enslaved people spent growing food for themselves. Time plantation owners wanted directed toward sugar. The people expected to eat it were not customers being asked what they wanted. In plantation accounts, they appeared as a cost to be controlled. That is why a king approved the project. That is why a navy ship surrendered its captain's cabin to plant pots. And that is why Britain tried again after the bounty was lost. Breadfruit was not sent to the Caribbean simply to feed people. It was sent to make the plantation system cheaper to run. What happens when a generous food tree enters a system built on forced labor? The tree itself is not guilty. Breadfruit did not design a plantation, command a ship, or enslave anyone. And a hungry person eating it did not endorse the system that brought it. But the mission matters because it shows how power can hide inside an ordinary object. A fruit can look harmless on a plate while carrying a history of decisions made far away. Who controls the land? Whose knowledge is taken? Whose labor is counted? And whose preferences do not matter? The British imagined breadfruit as a quiet part of the plantation machine. They could move the plant. They could not permanently control what it would mean. When breadfruit reached the Caribbean, it did not instantly become a beloved staple. It was unfamiliar. People already had food traditions of their own. Adoption was slow and uneven, not the simple overnight success its promoters had promised. That delay is sometimes reduced to a neat story. Enslaved people rejected the fruit because they hated what it represented. The reality is harder to compress. Evidence varies from island to island, and food choices were shaped by taste, access, cooking knowledge, coercion, and time. But the larger reversal is clear. After slavery ended, breadfruit became more important in many Caribbean food traditions. Families and cooks learned when to pick it, how to roast it, what to serve beside it, and which local varieties they valued. Knowledge accumulated in kitchens, gardens, markets, and shared meals. The crop was no longer only what colonial planners had intended it to be. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, roasted breadfruit with fried jackfish became the national dish. Breadfruit is celebrated there during August, Emancipation Month, marking the end of slavery. The timing holds the whole contradiction in one frame. A fruit introduced to lower the cost of slavery is now presented through freedom, memory, and national identity. Imagine breadfruit blackening over a fire, its green skin giving way to soft, steaming flesh. On the Bounty, the plant had been cargo measured in pots. On a Caribbean table, it became flavor, technique, hospitality, and choice. That does not erase the original mission. Taking it back does not mean forgetting. It means people can take something imposed on them and refuse to let the person who imposed it keep the final word. The same tree can therefore hold two truths. Breadfruit can be a reminder of exploitation. It can also be evidence of Caribbean creativity and survival. And there is another surprise. While Western popular culture kept retelling the drama between Bligh and Christian, the people growing, cooking, naming, and preserving breadfruit continued the more important story almost outside the frame. The mutiny became legend. The food became life. In 1985, a young botanist named Diane Ragone traveled to Samoa to study breadfruit. That first collecting trip grew into decades of work across roughly 50 Pacific islands. Ragone found not one uniform crop, but extraordinary diversity. Trees with different seasons, flavors, textures, shapes, and local histories. The Breadfruit Institute she later led now conserves around 150 cultivated varieties. That matters because the future of breadfruit does not rest on one supposedly perfect tree. It rests on diversity and on the people who know that diversity. The same lesson is visible in Hawaii. In 2016, 9 growers formed the Hawaii Ulu Cooperative. It has since grown to more than 200 member farms across 4 islands, connecting local harvests with processors, markets, schools, and kitchens. This is what a real return looks like. It is not a heroic outsider arriving with a forgotten solution. It is growers, cooks, researchers, and communities rebuilding the links that allow a food to matter. Breadfruit also attracts attention in a warming world. It is a long-lived tropical tree that can provide a starchy local food. Climate models suggest much of today's suitable growing area may remain suitable, but the picture is uneven. Some regions are expected to lose more good growing land, and harsher conditions can reduce reliability. So breadfruit is promising. It is not climate-proof. Nor is planting a tree enough. Fruit is seasonal and perishable. Different varieties behave differently. Farmers need planting material, harvest help, buyers, processing, storage, and people who want to cook the food. For home cooks, one practical fact matters most. Maturity changes texture and preparation. Learn from a trusted local grower or recipe source. Traditional pit fermentation is skilled community knowledge, not a casual home experiment. The future is not about repeating the bounty's logic, moving a plant while ignoring the people who understand it. It is about keeping plant, place, knowledge, and choice together. Return to that morning in 1789. Fletcher Christian has taken the bounty. William Bligh is disappearing across the water. Breadfruit plants are being hurled over the rail, one pot after another. To the men on that deck, the plants may have looked like failed cargo. They were wrong. Bligh would return. Britain's plan would reach the Caribbean, but the meaning of breadfruit would keep changing long after the empire lost control of it. The tree leaves us with 3 clear lessons. First, no crop is discovered when outsiders notice it. Breadfruit was already a Pacific achievement, created through generations of selection, voyaging, cultivation, cooking, and care. Second, food can be used as infrastructure for power. Britain moved breadfruit because plantation owners wanted a cheaper way to sustain forced labor. Third, origins do not dictate destiny. Caribbean communities took a crop introduced through exploitation and made it part of cuisine, celebration, and identity. That is the real story the mutiny hides. Breadfruit was never just a strange fruit on a famous ship. It was a Pacific inheritance, a British instrument, and a Caribbean reclamation. The takeaway is simple. Food never arrives alone. It carries the choices of the people who move it, the systems that use it, and the communities that decide what it will become next. Do you see Caribbean breadfruit as a symbol of exploitation or as proof that communities can reclaim what was once imposed on them? Tell us in the comments, and subscribe to Forgotten Crops for more food history buried beneath our feet.